Hello, I am Tanny Reed Walker. Welcome to Monday Morning with Tanny. Usually I do this live. Today I am actually on vacation, but I didn't want to leave this space open, so I'm doing a video. The day this will be posted, hopefully if everything goes well, is August 3rd, 2020. So like I said, I am Tanny. I am a counselor with FCSS. I work in the Barons-Rica-Warner area, which is a large region in southern Alberta. I have been a counselor for 12 years. I have been a social worker for 16 years. And I have been working and learning about loss and grief and mourning and death for a really long time. All of my career and just as a human being, learning about grief and loss and transition. So my prior videos in this series are how you can support yourself and your loved ones when you're in a period of grief and mourning. And I wanted to do a series on supporting children because children are complicated. Adults are complicated. We have a lot of barriers and preconceived notions and like all kinds of complications that happen when it comes to grieving. So it's a big topic. But dealing with children is kind of scary, I think, at times. We're worried that it's going to be overwhelming for them. We're worried they're going to grow up missing a piece of themselves. We're worried we're going to mess them up. Worried we're going to make them cry. We're worried that they're never going to change and grow and adapt to this. And basically just any parent and person is worried they're going to mess their kids up. So let's talk about how children have a perception and awareness of death. So I like to actually start this off with talking about a little bit of prevention. I imagine if you're watching this, you already have a child or know of a child who has had a loss. But knowing what their perceptions are and their awarenesses about death can be helpful. And then as we go on through the series, we'll talk about other various aspects, like how to help them cope, what kind of things are going to come up with that for them, and some more specific ideas on how to assist that. Oh, so I know that when I was younger, I'd heard a lot, oh, it doesn't matter if that baby lost a parent or somebody through death, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to remember anyway. And like that feels kind of true because we don't have actual formed, like tangible recall memory starting till about 3. Like before that, it's all kind of hazy. The thing though is losses are like built into their brains. So you probably can look at this cup and imagine yourself licking it. Like you can imagine what that would probably feel like. I'm holding it so I know, so it's wet. So you probably also kind of know what it would feel like and what it would taste like and all of those things. But do you actually remember ever licking a cup like this? I don't remember. But I tell you, I know exactly what this would taste like and feel like. And that's really weird. But that's what happens in those first few years of life. You lick and taste and experience all these things and they build into a solid knowledge in your brain. So I don't need to remember actually licking anything. I'm pretty certain these kind of Starbucks cups weren't around 40 some odd years ago when I was doing that. but I liked enough things to know, just by the look of it, what it would be like. So that's how our memories are kind of built. They're just built as like this foundation when you're little, under the age of 3. Obviously we learn more and we gain more and all of those things, but it's like, so when a loss happens, it kind of is permanently in these little ones' brains. So we want to make sure that we support them and give them the love and the space and the understanding and the compassion as they, little tiny brains, work to incorporate that loss and realize that they can survive and thrive and still be loved, because it's pretty impactful. So anyway, start off with the prevention part. Children's perception and awareness. And where did I put it? I actually filmed this before, but I filmed it without the volume. Like, I don't know what happened. Or maybe I filled it with the volume and then something else happened. Anyway, it didn't work. Technological glitch. So hopefully this one works. I had the book out there before. So Dr. Alan Wolfelt, my favorite. He has a Center for Loss in Colorado. He is an amazing, amazing, compassionate human being whose whole existence is supporting people with grief and loss and transition. So here's a book. It's Companioning the Grieving Child. It's by Dr. Alan Wolfelt, and it's for caregivers. It is packed. I also took a 3-day training session with him, which was incredible, to learn more about supporting children. And so here I am doing that. Oh, and here's the thing. I'm going to be doing the 12 dimensions of a child's grief, and it'll probably be over 3 videos. I tend to like to do 3 videos about certain things. 3 seems to be my magic number. And it'll be, like I said, 12 dimensions, so I'll probably work on 4 dimensions each, and it's really nice because we can talk about the dimension, so what are the things that children are experiencing, and then some ways to support them. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself kind of, but I'm giving you a bit of a teaser too. So this book is Companioning the Grieving Child, Dr. Alan Wolfelt, and he's fantastic. I think everyone should have a class from him. But then I'm a counselor, so sometimes people think we're a bit weird. Okay, children's perception. So I already started talking a little bit about infants. So infants are obviously very dependent on their primary caregiver, which usually tends to be a mom, and they're very aware of separateness. They are unable to conceive of death, but are acutely aware of separation from their mother. They're also aware of separation from their father, if father's involved, and other important people that are in their lives quite a bit. But mostly mom. And it's interesting. I just want to share a tidbit. So there's research that in utero, so in babies in mom's tummy, they learn their mom's voices, and if dad talks to them lots too, they'll learn dad's voice, and same with other family members that might be in the home a lot, like a sibling. So as soon as the baby's born, let's say the doctor that's there when the baby's being delivered is standing on one side of babe, and mom is on the other side, and the baby's in the middle. I'm holding my hands up there, you can see. So baby's in the middle, and both of them say baby's name. Baby will turn towards their mom. And if, like I said, if dad or somebody else really important, so if there's a male nurse or doctor that's standing there and says baby's name and dad says baby's name, baby will turn or try to turn towards dad. So right from the beginning, they know the voices and they know who's important. And so right from then, that love bond is being built. And when it disappears, it's hard on them. It's hard on their little systems. That piece of that person has been there from their very beginning, even if it's not very long. And when it's suddenly gone, that's very difficult. And also, there's a really intense physical bond. They realize they need to be touched, they need to hear, they need to see, they need to taste, they need to smell. So all of those things are very important for them to be attached. So when those things disappear, they're very aware. That's why babies can't be away from their parents for very long. Like, not very long at all. As they get a little bit older, they really become fascinated with peekaboo. So when you're like this, you're literally gone. So then you go peekaboo, and they, oh, you're there again, and they get very excited. That's because they don't have object permanence. They don't realize that when Granny puts her hands over her face, suddenly she's gone, and then when she comes back in, it's like, oh my goodness, there you are. I actually currently have a grandchild that's 3 months old, almost 4 months old, and she just gets so shocked. And they like that. It's learning for them. They learn to just be aware. And even like, you'll know when they suddenly see their hands, and all of a sudden their hands come in, and they're like, oh my gosh, and then they disappear, and they don't even know what happened. So anyway, it's good to play those kind of games with these little ones. It's just so they can learn about object permanence. And to understand that even if they don't understand what death is and they can't verbalize it, they deep down know when something's not there. And if you are supporting a child that is an infant that has a very significant loss, just be really gentle and kind and understand they're just going to cry because they don't have any words for what's going on, and they just need compassion and gentleness and as much care as you can give them. Okay, now we'll move on to toddlers. Toddlers are very egocentric. They're concerned with their wishes and their needs. They don't really understand why anybody else would be crying or why they're tired or anything like that. They are not capable of thinking in the abstract, and therefore the concept of death is not really understood or thought about. So I use experiences personally because I learn about things, and then I get to be around people, especially my grandkids, that show this to me. So one of my grandchildren is 3. So he's toddler on the cusp of preschool, and we were on a road trip, and we had to stop by the side of the road, and we went off for a little tiny walk out into the field, and we noticed a moth, and it was dying. It was laying there on the ground, and its legs were twitching, and at first I thought it was dead, and then it was twitching. And so I talked to him about how this moth used to fly around, and now its time is done, and it's not going to fly anymore, and it's dying. And so we watched it, and we watched it die, and then it stopped moving. And I said, this one isn't going to fly anymore. He's dead. And so it was a time to be able to sit and talk a little bit about death and what that is. So I think that's really important to do with our little ones. If you see something and you're talking, you'll just learn about what death is with them, with their pets, with bugs, with lots of little things. Toddlers have a lot of concern about their body integrity and safety, and are quite afraid of being abandoned or separate. So they may venture off a little bit further from their parents, but they usually like to keep them in eyesight. Sometimes transitioning to having a babysitter can be a big deal because they don't want to be separated. They're aware that this is not a good thing, being away from their parent. Their parent is very important to them and to keeping their body intact. And they just are aware of their systems and what's going on for them. So they're not aware of death per se, but they are very concerned about separation. So by preschool, lots of children have had exposure to death. So it could be a pet, or like I said, experiencing that bug's death. It could be a multitude of things, a great grandparent. So many things can happen. So they've had some exposure, and they're often very curious about death, and they start to collect ideas. So what does this mean? What is death? What is the burial? What is a funeral? What happens after death? What's God? What's heaven? What's angels? They'll have lots of ideas, and they'll be listening a lot and trying to create a frame of reference for what this all means. And they may ask lots of questions. And if they are asking questions, you don't have to go into deep detail. Just be very clear and concise, and try not to use euphemisms, especially with any of the children. So if you say something to the effect of, oh, they just went to sleep. Well, that can create a lot of sleep issues for people, because he's going to be worried that if you go to sleep, or if he goes to sleep, they're never going to come back. And what does that mean exactly? Or things like, if it was a young person's death, it's like, oh, well, they were so wonderful that God decided to take them to heaven. Well, if I was a little kid, I'm not ever going to be good, because I don't want to go to heaven. I want to stay with my family. So you have to be very careful and just be clear and concise, and try not to expand past their knowledge. They will come back to you time after time and build on it. So they're aware of the existence, but their concept of death is immature. They often do see it as temporary. They feel that after you die, like, you still do the things that you do now. So you eat and sleep and breathe. They don't quite understand. And it doesn't really help with a lot of our television programming and our video games, where people die and stuff in those all the time, and then they exist again. So that can be really difficult. And even if they die, like permanently die, you can watch the movie again and see them. So they're not quite able to understand that this is a permanent situation. And then they'll often personify death as like a being, so an angel or a boogeyman or a devil or a ghost, and they're worried that this being is going to come take away their family member or themselves, and they can be quite scared, and it could manifest as the monster under the bed or in the closet, just because they're not sure how that works. So it's a good thing to be able to talk about how it's not an actual creature that's going to come get them. They often view death as an accident rather than a naturally occurring event, so they can't comprehend that life just simply ends. There usually has to be something that happens. And that, kind of makes sense, because we're always like, careful you don't fall off the edge of the dock into the water, you might drown. Like, we are very concerned about accidental death with children, because that's how children die in our world. So it would make quite a bit of sense that they would think it was an accident. I'm constantly like, hold on to Granny's hand so you don't get run over by a car. Well, I guess that was a really good example. Anyway, they often demonstrate magical quality of thinking, and they'll think that they did something. I remember thinking that my sister, who was an infant when one of my great-grandmothers died, I remember thinking for years and years and years that she killed her. Was somehow she had jumped on my grandmother's chest or something. Like, I had like this really weird notion, and I don't know where it came from. But I asked my mom, and my mom's like, no, she just died in her sleep. She was really old and sick, and we had nothing to do with it. But as a young child, somehow, instead of relating it to myself, I related it to my sister. But a lot of kids will relate it to something that's completely not true. And a lot of times it'll be themselves too. They'll think that they did something bad, so that person died. And then the death man will take them away. Preschool children have fear of abandonment and body mutilation. So they're just words they're either going to be abandoned or something terrible is going to happen to their body. So school-age children. This is generally the ages between like 6 and 10 or 11. And children by then are aware that death is irreversible, universal, and personal. So irreversible means that they know that you can't go backwards. When you're dead, you're dead. Universal means it's going to happen to everybody, and personal means it can happen to them. Sometimes school-age children may develop rituals to help them cope with anxiety, produced by the awareness of death. I'm not sure exactly what rituals kids are going to choose. It could be as simple as, if I don't brush my teeth every night, it means I've done something wrong and somebody's going to die. They have a lot of thoughts around it and might need some support in talking about their anxiety and how they're feeling and what to do with those emotions. They may feel that illnesses that they have are payments for wrongdoing. So if they've done something wrong and they're keeping this really big secret from everybody, and somebody gets sick or they get sick, they might feel like they're being punished for doing that wrong thing. Around the age of 6, a child is usually aware of a seriousness of their own illness or their own death, even if they aren't told directly. Children are very perceptive. They may not know what's going wrong, but they can tell that something is going wrong. And if it's something that's going wrong with them, of course they're going to feel that and know that, and they're going to see it in their loved ones' eyes. Their loved ones are everything to them. And fears of separation are diminishing. So obviously school-age children tend to be able to go to school and be away from their parents a lot more than the younger ages. And that's something to think about. If a school-age child is exhibiting some separation anxiety, it might be a good idea to talk about what their beliefs and understanding of death is. Because a lot of times kids are worried about death. They may hear about a classmate's parent who died, or they may hear about somebody's grandparent who died, and they're very concerned and they don't want to leave, and they don't yet have the vocabulary to talk about that, or it may not be comfortable in their family to talk about that. So last we get to adolescent, and don't worry, I'm going to do at least one whole entire thing on adolescents, because adolescents have a lot going on with their developmental stage, and then to have a death put on top of it is really, really huge. So by the time one's an adolescent, usually have a mature concept of death. However, they also like to deny death. And some of the self-destructive behaviors that adolescents show, such as drug use, not taking their meds if they're diabetic or have some sort of medical issues, suicide, and risky behavior can actually be related to the adolescent's inability to accept the finality of death. And again, I think because of our video games and a lot of other things, it's kind of hard to conceive that death is permanent. And it's painful when you're at the start of your life and you're full of all this energy and everything to think of death or someone being gone. And I also think that this adolescent concept of understanding death, but also being denying of it, can last for a lot of years. I know some seniors who won't talk about death, have nothing to do with it. It's like zero. And I feel like that just carried on, and a lot of our culture likes to clean it up and sterilize it and put it in obscure funeral homes and move people forward and lose a lot of the rituals that we used to have in the olden days. And I think those rituals and having the community and the death in the face was just a natural way to teach children and to learn about this part of life. And it's gone now. So I'm hoping that talking a little bit about what the developmental stages are for understanding death will help you have that conversation and those conversations throughout your children's life, so that when they do inevitably come to a place where they lose really important people, they have some capacity to talk about it and understand it, and do all the things that are required as a human to incorporate that into our worlds. Oh, so a little tiny bit here about talking to children about death. Don't use euphemisms like I've talked about. Don't say they're asleep. It might make them think they're going to wake up. Children cope with what they know. So try to be very clear and let them know the truth of what's going on. You can't soften it. It's actually harder if you do try to soften it. Use simple, concrete language. Young children are very literal. So don't use abstract or complex words. Be literal. They died. We're burying. They're getting buried. We had to cremate them. What's cremate mean? It means that we have to burn their bodies. Like, simple. And you don't have to go into detail. If they need details, they will ask you. And sometimes you can just turn it back on them and say, so what do you think? Tell me about your thoughts on this. Where did Grandma go when she died? Oh, well, she's dead. Yeah. Where do you think she went? And it doesn't matter if the child is right or wrong or anything like that. It's just good to get their opinion and their ideas on what's happened. So don't over-explain. Be brief and know that they're curious, and this will carry on. They often play death. They're trying to process it. I'll talk about that more in another episode. And show them. If they don't understand what a coffin is, show them. If they don't understand what cremation is and you have the ashes, show them the ashes. Let them know what it is, what's happened. It's very important for kids to have an understanding. They're learning. They're visual. It's not going to hurt them. They're already hurting. They already have so much pain. And like you, they're asking why and what and how. And this is a great time to start teaching them why, what, and how, and to be open to their feelings. If you would like an explanation of simple funeral terms, you can definitely contact me. I'm pretty sure Dr. Alan Wolfelt has these resources on his website. You can easily Google that. Again, be very clear with children about what's going on. And I know it's going to be hard. Your great big heart is hurting, and it's hurting for them and with them. And the best thing you can do is to be kind and answer their questions and be gentle. Sorry about the cough. If you're dealing with a child and you're having this huge thing on you, remember to be kind. Take time. If you need help, reach out for it. Like, that's what us caregivers and us people that work in grief and in counseling, that's what we're here for. We were brought here to help you. Look at the resources. Be curious yourself. and realize that everyone's grief journey is as individual as their love journey. Their relationship with the person that died is as individual as your relationship with the person that died. So keep your heart open and your compassion invoked, and make sure you're doing all of that stuff for yourself as well. Thank you very much for being at the Monday morning, and I look forward to seeing you next week, and when we're going to talk about the 12 dimensions.